We are intently focused on Affirmation Tower. I mean, that project is an opportunity to make an international statement about Black economic development.
Do you think they're going to continue to try to block you guys from doing the Affirmation Tower?
You know, why they're blocking, I don't know. But if you think about this struggle that we're in, it pales in comparison to the struggles what our ancestors and those who came before me had to do to make me possible. So we will not relent at all.
This be my rants and gems. Be my rants and gems. Y'all can do it, we discover. Peace to all the kings and the queens, word the motherland.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Rants and Gems. My name is Matt Garland, NMLS number 58700, better known as MG the Mortgage Guy. Today, we have a special episode. Kiana is not with us today, but she's here in spirit. But we're going to have a dynamic conversation. I met this gentleman for the first time at InvestFest this past year in Atlanta. He was on my real estate panel with Donahue Peoples, and it was an amazing conversation that I had to run the back and talk about everything. The managing director for Exact Capital. Exact Capital has been developing housing, specifically in urban areas, for the past 20 plus years. They've developed over $1 billion in commercial and residential projects and over 5,000 units. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm round of applause for Craig Livingston.
Matt, it's great to be here today, man.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
No problem.
So we've been at this for a while, and we really focus at Exact Capital on what we call public-private partnerships.
Okay.
We like to engage with government, and as you know, a lot of times government will invest a lot of money into projects to generate a certain outcome. They want to develop affordable housing, they want to seed an industry in a particular area, or they want to transform a neighborhood. And we're very happy to venture along with government, but we are a for-profit enterprise, and we do it on a for-profit basis.
Incredible. 5,000 units and over $1 billion.
Right.
That's not something to take too lightly. So let's rewind this. Let's talk about your first deal. First of all, who is Craig? Let's give a little bit about your background for the people who don't know who you are.
I'm traditionally trained. I'm a financier. Went to University of Connecticut for undergrad, Columbia for business school. And when I completed business school, I ventured to Wall Street, spent some time there. And, the folks in my generation, all the brothers who went to business school read a book called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?
Why should white guys have all the fun?
It was the autobiography of Reginald Lewis, who was the first Black billionaire in the 80s and 90s. Unfortunately, he passed away in the early 90s, but his autobiography was literally a roadmap, a playbook on how to advance in business, particularly coming from, where we come from, not having, family capital and not having all the traditional advantages some other groups have. So it's an amazing book. I recommend it to everybody, particularly all the young people who I mentor. I always tell them, first thing you do, read that book.
Why should all the white guys have
Why should
fun?
white guys have all the fun?
I like that. Y'all in the comments. Put that in the comments. Make sure y'all go get that book.
So when I got out of business school, spent some time on Wall Street, and then my plan and most of my peers' plan was always to leave and become entrepreneurial, to launch our own venture and figure out how to create real value for ourselves. And in my case, I left Wall Street in the 2000s and started getting involved in real estate. My original plan was to, hang a shingle and to do asset management, capital raising, and advisory, but no one hired me for advisory, and no one gave me any money to manage. But a bunch of people knocked on my door and said, "Hey, you're a Wall Street guy, used to work at Goldman Sachs, can you raise money for me?" And I raised money for a few clients who were real estate developers. And I remember one day I'm in a closing and I brought like $15 million to this developer's project. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the closing statement, and here I am, this little, just a line item and a fee, but the real money was being created across the table. And so that was one of the major light bulbs that went off in my life. And I said, I have to figure out how to be on the other side of the table. So after that closing, I made my fee, but I shadowed that developer for 2 to 3 years for free, so I could learn that skill set. And that's a very important thing, because nowadays a lot of young people who I encounter say, "Hey, can you give me a job? Can you work for me?" And I say, well, I'm not going to pay you to learn, right? You have to find a way to get into an exchange where you're providing value, and along the way, you're going to pick up a skill set and you're going to learn what I learned. And that's, it's the way I did it, and that's how I encourage other folks to do it.
I'm not going to pay you to learn.
Right.
You got to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, we're not an educational institution, but I do encounter some young people who get that immediately, and they'll keep their day jobs, and they want to know everything. Can I do this for you? Can I do that for you? Can I come here with you? Can I learn this kind of? And there's instances where I could give them a task or two, or involve them in what we're doing, so they increase their knowledge base. And because what we need to have is Craig Livingston and Don Peebles and Cheryl McKissick shouldn't be rarities. We should have 10,000 times the amount of Black developers that we have in this country. We have that type of runway, and we have that type of opportunity now. And we really have to bring more of our people, particularly young people, into commercial real estate.
Well, that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you, right? Because my world is more residential based, more of that first time home buyer, first time investor, or maybe the mid-level investor, but they're mainly dealing with the residential landscape. And this is why I wanted to have you on here to talk about commercial real estate and talk about the importance of Black real estate developers, right? We don't have too many of them, especially at the scale of what you and your team is doing, right? So can you just elaborate a little bit on why is it important for us to have more Black developers?
Okay, this is going to be kind of lengthy, but let me first start by saying, because I don't want, when folks see this, I want them to know that what I did is rudimentary, and they can do it too. So I bought my first real estate property while I still had a job. And the first property I bought wasn't, a single family home, as a lot of people do when they think they're pursuing the American dream. I wanted an investment property. And I'm sure you've articulated to your viewership the importance of getting an investment property before you get a property that sucks all your disposable income out of your pocket every month.
Absolutely.
You want a property that's going to add income to your life every month. So I bought a 3-family with an FHA loan while I was still an investment banker.
Your first deal.
FHA loan. And every month that I owned that property made me between $800 and $1,000. And
you were living for free. That was your cash flow.
Right. So after 6 or 7 months, I had my investment back. I put out like $6,500, like $130,000 house. I had my 7 months, I had my investment back. And then after 18 months, I get a call from the realtor who sold me the property. He said, hey, there's an offer for your home. And so what's the offer? She said, $230,000, $100,000 profit after making profit every month for 18 months. I hung up the phone with her, and I swear this is my exact reaction. I looked around the trading desk that I was on, and I thought to myself, well, if I could do that, why am I coming here every day?
Yeah.
And that's like a major light bulb, another major light bulb that went off in my life. Took that profits and went and bought 4 more. And went from 3 families to the development business.
Okay.
When I left Wall Street, started my business, like I said, I learned from a developer. And the first property we developed was a market rate condominium in Harlem. And it came to market in December of 2009, which was in the middle of the financial collapse. And, I'm an optimist, but even I was a little nervous.
That was really in the thick of it.
I thought for about a week or two, wow, this might have to be a rental. I don't know if we could sell these units. There was no end loan market. No banks were making loans to purchasers. But we brought it to market, and we had a pretty good sellout. And 16 months, we sold out all of it. Had like a $60 million.
How many units total?
73 units.
73 units.
We had about a $60 million sellout. And
wow.
It was a successful project given what was happening in the macroeconomic environment at that time. I will say, we ended up getting everything sold by mid-2011. And by 2015, every single unit in that building had doubled in price.
Wow.
Right? So, that's the power of real estate.
Wow.
And what that experience did for me, though, it made me think about how can I do real estate in a commercial way, but inoculate ourselves from the economic cycle. There's always ups and downs, and we're going through a recession right now, right? Interest rates have skyrocketed, and it's a painful time for real estate, right? And what I found was affordable housing. So affordable housing are public-private partnerships where, developers like myself engage with government, and we try to create housing that's affordable to, your school teacher who's married to an Uber driver,
Yeah.
right? These are hardworking people, working class Americans, but they can't afford to pay $4,000 or $5,000 a month for rent. And right now, we have in this country a 7 million unit housing deficit. So let me just talk about that for a minute. 7 million units of housing, and practically all of that is really at the middle income tranche, because people who are wealthy, who are buying $2 and $3, $5, $10, $20 million homes, they can buy whatever they want, whenever they want, right? 7 million homes represents about $2.5 trillion of economic opportunity.
Wow.
So we need to get our young people in this business. So over the next decade, we could be a big part of creating that $2.5 trillion of wealth.
Wow. Lots to unpack what you just said. First, you went from a 3-family making $800 a month profit for 18 months.
Right.
Got all your initial investment back in 6 to 8 months, sold it, took that $100K profit
After 18 months,
purchased 4 more properties,
right.
and then those properties became rental and was cash flowing for you. And then you say, you know what? I can fire my job and do this full time.
That's right.
And then your first project was in the thick of the financial crisis, the Great Depression, for 73 units on a $63 million sellout.
That's right.
That's incredible.
Right.
But it all started with the first deal.
It started with the first deal. That's why this path is very replicable. Anyone listening to this podcast can do this. I mean, it's like get involved. And I'll just caution people, and I know you talk about it, and I'll just, give my view on it. Whenever you have investment capital, and you take that capital, for instance, and do what most people want to do, they want to go buy that dream house, right? So I'll just use some round numbers. If you have someone making, $50,000 a year, they save up money, they do what I did, and if they can make an extra $1,000 a month in rental income, guess what? They gave themselves a $12,000 raise. That's over 20% raise.
Yeah.
You're not getting from your job. You gave it to yourself, and that's income in your pocket. So guess what? It's easier now to go buy the next one because you have more income, you have more assets, and the more you do it, the easier it gets. But if you go and you buy a single family home and you live in it, guess what? All your income goes to pay that mortgage after you pay, your other living expenses, and you're not increasing your income. So you have, a pretty, what I think is a pretty simple choice to make. After you own 2, 3, 4 homes, okay, investment properties, go buy your luxury property, but you already have assets that are working for you. While you're sleeping, you're making money.
Absolutely. And now that cash flow can pay for your dream home.
That's right.
The house that you really want. And that's something I preach all the time with the house hacking strategy. It's like if you are a first-time home buyer, or not even if you own the property, why not just house hack it? Right. Bring in that capital, because the house you probably really want, you probably can't afford today anyway. Right. Bring in enough cash flow so that way you can live for free.
That's right.
That's the best way, because I firmly believe the American dream is flawed. They want you to get the White House, the picket fence, the backyard, have the barbecues and bar mitzvahs, which that's all good, right? But if it's not bringing in no money, then it's just a liability.
Well, this gets you locked into the wage slavery system, really.
Correct.
Right. You want to escape from wage slavery.
Wage slavery. Right. I like that. I got to use that one. So let's talk about, all right, so now you're investment banking. You learned from that first deal. You raised about $15 million. And then you took that expertise and you used it for your first project. Let's talk about structuring deals, right? I want to give the people some actionable items and steps on how can they raise capital, because there's a lot of people out here that want to do big deals, and they may have the knowledge and the expertise, but they don't have the capital to fund projects, right? So how do you go, what are 3 steps to raise, that type of money?
Well, let me say this. It's easier to raise 20 million than it is 2 million.
Speak on that. You got my attention now.
There are folks, investment managers, whose job it is, just like, some people may go to Starbucks every morning, or they may go to a school and teach. It's their job to invest money on a daily basis. These are institutional investors. And if they have $200-300 million to invest, they can't put it out in $2 million tranches. They want the opportunity to put money into big deals. There was a time when I started my career, and I remember I was raising money from AIG. I was having a conversation with AIG, and I was there having a meeting. I met this gentleman, showing him a project, and he said, "Great, but here's the problem. I can't put enough money into it, right? My mandate, my boss tells me I have to invest $100 million every year." And he said, "Craig, if I put out $60 million into 5 deals and they're all home runs, I failed.
Because you didn't give up the $100 million.
And I'm not going to, and somebody else will have my job." About a year later, I went back to AIG to have another conversation with folks. And I went to just knock on his door and say, "Hello, guess what?" He wasn't there. So guess what he didn't do?
He didn't deliver.
He didn't put that money out.
He didn't deploy that $100 million.
He didn't put that money out, because folks in the investment management industry, they make their money based on the returns that the deals that they invest in have generated. So if money's sitting, they're not making money. But Matt, the truth about the institutional investment world is it's not diverse enough, right?
Okay.
So Don and I and another of our colleagues, we push very hard to increase the diversity in private equity, investment management. We have to stop what is currently the status quo, where 98.3% of the $69 trillion of private equity and venture capital funds are managed by white men. So only 1.3% of that capital is managed by women or people of color.
Wow.
And that's a mandate that has to be satisfied. And this is something that for your viewers, all of the comptrollers and your state treasurer, your state comptroller, they have to diversify, because if they diversify and money is in hands of people who look like you and I, we have greater access, because that's where our natural networks are.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, wow. So that going after the investment firms is probably the easiest and quickest way to get your projects funded.
Right. Private equity firms, family offices, high net worth individuals, they're out there. If you start knocking on doors, going to conferences, there's, family office conferences all the time. There's a few happening, I think, this month in Manhattan, but they happen all over the place. And, getting in that flow of information is what folks need to do.
That was going to be my question. Like, where do you find these people? Because, they're not going to probably find them in your local Starbucks, right? Where else can you find them besides these type of networking events? Like, how does, like, someone like myself, for example, like, I'm around the world, I'm moving and shaking, right? Like, how do I find these high net worth individuals, these investment banking firms, besides the networking event you just
So
mentioned?
you're going to start with the folks in the investment world. So many people may have like a broker, or they may be doing business, say they may have a Merrill Lynch account, or an investment account somewhere. I would say if you have to first start with the people who are in the business, and you have to tell them, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to raise this amount of capital. You may not know them today, but someone knows them. So the more you talk about what you're doing, what your deals are, the amount of capital you need, you have to mine your network, and you can get plugged into. So someone, let's say if you had a broker at Merrill Lynch, and you said, hey, I want to do this real estate deal that I'm buying this. He might say, well, I have a high net worth client who's looking to invest in real estate. Or there's a family office that we did some business with last year, and they're looking for real estate. And as you build that network over time, and you'll get there. And you should ultimately want to have 3, 4, 5, 6 different people you can talk to when you need to raise capital. Knock on those doors. When I was in business school, one of the first classes I ever took, the professor said to me, he said, "Don't worry about raising money. Worry about good ideas. Money will find good ideas." It sounds crazy, but it's exactly true.
Money will find good ideas.
Yeah.
I like that. That is very true. Now, if the proper way to go about this is you have to have your deal secured already.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really go in there like, hey, I want to do X, Y, and
Right.
Z. You need to have the land secured, the property secured. If it's going to be a tear down, you need to have all that secured, have your architect plans drawn up. So you have to come out of pocket.
You have to spend some at-risk
money.
capital.
Yeah.
You have to put forth some pursuit costs. And the other thing you're going to have to do is have a little bit of a track record, right? Because no one's going to say, here's $5 million, figure it out. They're going to want to know that you got it figured out, and you demonstrated the acumen to execute on a deal and get it done. So what that means is if you have to develop that track record, sometimes invest along with somebody, be involved. Like you heard me talk about raising money for a developer, and I stuck with him for 3 years so I could learn.
Absolutely.
Right. So I was able to, when I wanted to get going, I was able to say, hey, I was involved in this deal and I did X, Y, Z, and I could point out all the activities I did and, my involvement in the deal. One deal led to 2 deals, 2 deals led to 4, and it just
ballooned like that.
That's right.
Interesting. So now you put out your capital, you have your project. Now you go raise money.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still working with banks? Are you getting financing from lenders?
We are. So let me say this. So a lot, like 80% of what we do at my firm today are public-private partnerships. We do a lot of affordable housing. We do we do things with RFPs. We have a project in Harlem, the Victoria Tower, which brought the first new full-service hotel to Harlem in 80 years.
Wow.
It's adjacent to the Apollo. There's 210 hotel rooms in one tower. The second tower has 190 apartments that we did in a 50, 30, 20 configuration, which is 50% market rate, 30% low income, and 20% middle income. We have a cultural arts facility with 2 black box theaters that will be operated by the Apollo Theater themselves. And there's office space. Then there's retail. There's 400,000 square feet in this one little, 15,000 square foot plot.
Wow.
But when you look at that deal, right, it's a highly structured deal. We raised capital. I raised it from a firm I used to work at, Goldman Sachs, who came in. They have a group there called the Urban Investment Group that takes on very transformative risk. They're bold in their approach, and they engage with people like myself to responsibly develop these types of assets that improve communities. And so when we were doing that, we had to bring some capital, but we were able to leverage things like low-income housing tax credits, right? Which is capital that comes into a deal. Then you have an institutional investor who puts it up, and what they get from it is they get a tax credit from the government over time to offset some of their tax liability. So we were able to monetize stuff like that. Then there was some real equity in that deal. We went out and raised some debt, and then there was some other special government type of capital. We love to do that type of business.
Capital stacks.
We have a highly structured capital stack because, I know I'm going very fast here.
No, you're good. They're gonna have to keep up.
All right, but we love to do highly structured deals because that's where you're going to generate the best returns. Right. Whenever there was a movie, Schindler's List. And Liam Neeson was in the movie, and there's this line where he says, "In some businesses I've lost money, in some businesses I've made money. I've never done as good as when I have the government as a partner."
You've never done as good when you have the government as a partner. Yeah. Why is that?
Because government invests for outcome, right? You tell me the last time you see a government project fail.
Never.
That's why.
Never.
You answered my question.
Yeah, smart move. So get the government as your partner, get the banks as your partner, get the institutional investors as your partner, and get high net worth individuals as your partner, and that completes your capital stack.
That's right.
OPM, other people's money.
Essentially.
So essentially, you guys are going into these projects, putting little money out of your pocket as possible, and making...
Well, to the point that you made, we have to put the capital out to get that project to fruition. We have to be able to get it to a closing table. So a closing table is whenever you can go and get a construction loan and actually start building, right? But before that happens, you have to purchase the land. You have to have an architect develop plans. There's a whole bunch of surveys that have to be done, environmental reports, a whole bunch of work that goes into getting it there. And that's the at-risk capital that you're going to put out. But once you get to the closing table, the real large tranches of capital come in from your lenders, from your investors, et cetera.
Now, typically, how long does it take? Once you get to the closing table, you secure the property, you have your project. How long does it take to now secure the rest of your capital stack? Like if you go into an institutional investor and you present your project, like how long does it typically take them to underwrite that?
So that underwriting process is happening during what we call pre-development.
Okay.
So when I say I'm going to buy that building or buy that piece of property, I already have a business plan. I already know how we want to monetize it. Okay. And I know that, this lender would like it for that reason. So I'm going to bring this deal over there. These 3 lenders over here aren't interested. It's not in their footprint. It's not consistent with their investment strategy for this year or whatever the reason is. Same thing with that's lenders, that's investors. And that capital is basically assembled on the way to the closing table.
Okay.
So while the architects are working, we're raising capital. We're structuring operating agreements. We're negotiating debt instruments. We're doing all the work that goes into it. We get to the closing table, and at that point, that's when all the commitments are made, all the capital is flowing in, and we're putting shovels in the ground and building something.
Immediately after closing.
Immediately.
Incredible. Let's talk about some of your projects that you have going now. You have something wonderful going on in Atlanta. Let's talk about that.
So, Atlanta's a phenomenal market. I'm really impressed with the velocity in that market.
I call it Wakanda.
It is. The velocity in that market's amazing, and it's a very diverse market. And I think Atlanta in particular, because you had people like Maynard Jackson who set the trend way back when, it has more fairly allocated economic opportunity, more so than even here in New York. Just 2 weeks ago, MARTA, which is the train system in Atlanta, awarded an RFP led to a team that was led by the People's Organization and Exact Capital. We have Don Washington and Bostero Partners and Third and Urban, as well as other local partners. But we're going to be building 1.2 million square feet.
Wow.
At the Bankhead train station, which is going to be adjacent to a 90-acre campus that Microsoft is developing.
Wow.
So it's an amazing, amazing project. We'll have 495 units of housing, mixed income housing. So there'll be some affordable housing there. We'll have a hotel and an office building. But again, tremendous opportunity. And, we were already in Atlanta developing there. Years ago, we bought a parcel of land, and we're already in construction on 250 units on the Beltline that will be delivered at the end of 2023. And we're looking at, even do more in that market.
So this new project, how long is that going to take to be delivered?
That will take, we've just awarded, so there's some negotiations that we have to go through. We will probably be in negotiations and pre-development for call it a year or two, and then 2 to 3 years of development. So, it's a 5-year exercise.
So all development projects of the scale typically would take, a 5-7 year window from start to finish.
You're talking, it could be, if you buy a piece of land and you just, do a market rate type of strategy, you could probably get it done 3 years, start to finish. The public-private partnerships are a little bit more complex because there's a lot more voices at the table, a lot more approval processes that have to go through, different levels of government review and authorizations. But it's well worth it because we have the privilege of being able to transform a lot of urban landscapes, which are our communities, in the way in which we can create opportunity for other Black and brown companies to participate.
So, because I know people when they watch this, they're going to ask this: how do you guys make money while you're going through this process?
It's real estate development is a capital intensive exercise. It takes a lot of capital. That's why we have to raise third party capital in order to do it. Because if we only were able to do projects based on only our funds, we would not be able to grow, right? Because growth is expensive. The average project we're going to do these days is going to be 70, 80, $100 million, right? So you think about, you have 3 or 4 of those going at the same time. It's a lot of capital.
That's a lot of capital, yeah.
Right? So, and we don't want to sit still and wait for one project to get done to take those proceeds and recycle them. We're trying to grow, so we want to do a lot of projects. We have another 240 units in construction in Columbia, South Carolina. We have a small deal in Newark, New Jersey, which is a very important deal, though. We were able to take a dilapidated set of buildings in a area of Newark that we will be renovating and turning into 75 units of newly renovated, green, clean, decent affordable housing. And again, that was only made possible because we had the support of Mayor Ras Baraka, right? And this was also important to him. It was important to the citizens of Newark, and we got involved, and we're moving forward. We should be closing that deal in, another 60 to 90 days. We have 850 units in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, that we bought about 15 months ago that we're going to renovate and turn into an affordable housing complex. And we're always looking at more and more deals. We're building in Harlem right now 52 units of affordable home ownership, right? And why that's important to us is because Harlem, the capital of Black America,
Absolutely.
is no longer black.
Black, not at all.
Right? So you've had all this institutional capital go into the market, all this government capital go into the market, and it's funded, the creation of a bunch of affordable housing. But what we didn't do is create enough home ownership opportunities so that the people who grew up in the neighborhood, who have an organic connection to Harlem, could come back there and live there affordably, right? And not be a renter. So they're buying in Jersey, they might be buying in Long Island, Pennsylvania.
But they can't afford Harlem.
But they can't afford Harlem anymore.
Yeah.
So we have to intentionally make sure we create opportunities for folks to own Harlem, to own Atlanta.
So how do you guys go about doing that? How do you intentionally make it to where Black people can stay in Harlem and afford to stay in Harlem?
Again, that's a public-private partnership. So the city of New York has a program, and we want to see the city doing a lot more of this in our communities. But they have this particular program we took advantage of that allowed us to build these two buildings. One's on 140th Street, one's on 150th Street, and they're going to be new condominiums. And you think about it, I mean, just on average, you're talking about like a 3-bedroom condo in Harlem for like $300,000. It's unheard of.
That's unheard of.
Right, but it's intentional. You have to create that home ownership because we're doing it for that Uber driver who's married to that school teacher. They have to be able to afford it.
Absolutely.
We want them to live there.
The
We want the
firefighter,
kids to live there.
the policeman.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for opportunities to do more of that type of stuff. We have some other opportunities that we're in discussions with other municipalities to do the same thing, where we want to create more affordable home ownership and keep our people in our communities and help to, have the right type of gentrification. Gentrification is not necessarily always bad, but it's bad when it displaces
Absolutely.
the community and doesn't make a provision for everybody, particularly people who've been there through some of the bad times, to participate in all the appreciation and the upside that's happening now.
I agree with that. I don't think gentrification is bad at all.
Right.
I think you want the neighborhoods to change. You don't want the neighborhoods to be run down. You don't want homelessness. You don't want drug addicts. You don't want any of that stuff. You want the Starbucks.
Right.
But you also don't want your people who's been there, like you said, forever, to not be able to afford it no more. So I commend you guys for definitely doing that. Let's talk about scaling, because you're buying properties all over the place. From Harlem, you said Oklahoma City, you got Atlanta, Newark, New Jersey. Like, how are you guys sourcing these deals? Like, I noticed you're not working with a regular realtor, right? Like, how are you guys scaling your business to develop at this level?
So I'll tell you, in our deal that's in construction in Atlanta, we're invited in by a group that had purchased that property. They had a vision, but they needed some help to execute on the vision. So we happily partnered with them. I'm very big into partnerships, right? And I think, we said this in Atlanta at InvestFest. And I'll tell you, when I see another Black developer, I don't see a competitor. I see a potential partner.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're invited in to our project in Peoplestown that's on the Beltline on Hank Aaron Drive. There's another local developer that bought the north leg. They partnered with Georgia State. They bought the north leg of Hank Aaron Drive. Georgia State is using Turner Field, where the Braves used to play, as their athletic facilities. The local developers building student housing. They're building office buildings, but they weren't creating any residential to help, that community to be transformed. So we bought the south leg with that partner invited us in, and we're in construction on 250 units. We're going to do more down the road. In Columbia, South Carolina, again, we're invited in. And I think the more deals that we do, people hear about us, they approach us for partnerships, and where we can, we'd love to make those deals happen and create win-win situations.
Good question. That was at least my next question. How do you know it's a win-win situation for you when you're creating these partnerships? Because everybody has a deal. Everybody says, hey, I have this, I have that. But how do you know, like, all right, this is the one?
All right. So we have, we're very good at underwriting. Remember, I'm a former investment banker. My partner is also a former Wall Street guy. So to be a good real estate developer, you need three things, right? You need great financial acumen, great communication skills, and great project management. So the more you do it, it becomes, I'm not gonna say it's exactly routine, but we know what to look for. We want the opportunity to be able to impact and transform a community the right way. We want to be able to create some affordable housing, or ideally mixed income housing, where you have some affordable units, some market rate units combined together, so you can build a real socioeconomic diverse community. Because if you build 100% low income all in one place, it's very nice, but it's all 100% low income. I want some of those kids to see a doctor and to see an accountant, right? Go to work every morning, see a business owner, and understand like there's a connection that they have organically from their community to those role models. So that's very important. So we also, we underwrite deals, and we know what the rents will look like in a particular market. We know what the operating costs look like in a particular market. And, there's an amount of money that has to be invested. If that deal can create the right return metric that we need, we like it.
I love it.
And the other thing is we like to, be able to mitigate risks.
How do you mitigate your risk?
Well, you have to be very careful, right? So the biggest risk over the past few years has been construction costs that have really ballooned and escalated. And there's ways to do that. We structure projects. For instance, we have deals where we'll hire a general contractor. We'll have them put up a payment and performance bond, so that if anything happened to them, if a sub went out of business or walked away, there's a bonding company, surety company, that insures the construction of that project, so we can ensure that it gets done. The other thing we do is we like to have a guaranteed maximum price contract, where that GC that we partner with is on the hook to deliver that product at that price. At that price.
Yeah, and you can't come back.
No, and so they're usually a little bit more expensive because they like to inoculate themselves from the volatility in the construction market, but it gives us a certain level of certainty that what we're paying for is going to be delivered.
And you know all your numbers up front.
Know all the numbers up front.
And you're not sitting here playing a guessing, because contractors would do that on any level. They'll tell you one price and they come back 10% more.
We got lawyers upon lawyers upon lawyers, right? So we structure our contracts very tightly. We don't like to be litigious, but there are times when sometimes we have to. And,
you got to do what you got to do.
You got
to protect the mother house.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, right? So I want to talk about, for the first time developer, if I'm looking to get into development, because you talk about you got lawyers upon lawyers, right? Who should we have on our team to make sure that we're running efficiently as real estate developers?
Right. Let's talk about like a first time commercial development to make it simple.
Yeah.
Okay. So you need a good architect, right? And good does not mean expensive. It means thoughtful, someone who pays attention to detail and is professional. And if you get a black architect, even better, right? Then you need to have a bunch of third-party things done. So you got to get your appraisals done, you got your surveys done, your environmental reports, and those are costs that you're going to spend out of your own pocket. But you got to get those done. Any lender who's doing business with you is going to want to see those. We call those third-party reports, right? And you need a good lawyer. Okay, your lawyer should have real estate experience. If you're out, if for the folks who are getting involved in the business, the lawyer your cousin who's a lawyer,
it's not probably not gonna work.
That's not the guy.
Yeah,
right? Unless he's a real estate lawyer, right? But just saying, hey, you're a lawyer, but he's a labor lawyer. It's not your guy.
It's not your guy. Yeah,
you want a lawyer who has a demonstrated track record of being a real estate attorney. It's a good idea to maybe talk to a couple clients, make sure you represented them well. Because no professional says, let me tell you about the 5 times I screwed my clients.
Yeah, basically.
Right?
Yeah.
They're all selling you to get new business
in
the door. So you want to do your homework. And then you need to be very thoughtful, particularly in the early days. Pay attention to everything because you're really learning everything. And you have to abide by Crawl, walk, run, right? Learn to crawl, learn to walk, learn to run. The more success you get, the more success comes, and the more success you can generate.
Crawl, walk, run. So don't come out the gate, your first project, try to make it a $250 million project. No. Maybe you want to start with something smaller just to get your feet wet. Maybe a $10 million project or a $5 million project. Right. Something that's small, something that you can manage, you can make your mistakes on, and then keep moving from there.
Matt, if you remember, I told you I started with a 3-family in the FHA loan,
correct.
Right? It's the mechanics of doing that and doing what I do now, 60% the same.
Okay.
So if you learn those fundamentals, you can get on the right track. And then the other activities above that, you learn along the way too. We've been at this for quite a while. It's just now that we're starting to do 9-figure projects. We didn't start out the gate doing 9-figure projects or doing an affirmation tower. Like, we have to drink milk and grow.
Drink milk and grow. I'm gonna use that one. I like that one. Drink milk and grow. Speaking of Affirmation Tower, let's talk about the Affirmation Tower. Where are you guys at right now with this project? Because when we spoke at Invest Fest, you're still going through the motions with the governor. Right. Are you guys still in the same position?
We are still intently focused on Affirmation Tower. I mean, that project is an opportunity to make an international statement about Black economic development, and to have the first skyscraper in New York City and the country developed by Black developers. So Don Peebles, Cheryl McKissick, and myself remain intently focused on it. Our team is still intact. The RFP has not been reissued yet. And as you know, there's a governor's race happening right now. There's an election. And 6 months ago, if you asked me, it looked like this was Governor Hochul's race to win. Now, listen,
it's up in the air.
It's a toss-up. And so whoever is at the leadership of the government in January of 2023, we will be advocating very strongly for the reissuance of this RFP so that we can win it and get to business.
Do you think that will happen? Or do you think they're going to continue to try to block you guys from doing the Affirmation Tower?
Why they're blocking, I don't know. But if you think about this struggle that we're in, it pales in comparison to the struggles what our ancestors and those who came before me had to do to make me possible, right? So we will not relent at all.
Man, what can we do to help you guys? Like, we have I like to say a fairly big platform and growing. Is there anything that we can do on our end to kind of put, friendly, nice pressure on them reissuing?
Well, I mean, our elected officials need to understand that the Black voter cares about economics, right? We care about economic development. We, at my firm, at Don's firm, Michelle's firm, and a lot of my colleagues in New York City, we're intentional about awarding contracts to people who look like us. So if you look at your average Black developer, he or she has a much higher propensity to have an architect, an accountant, an attorney, a mason, an electrician, a plumber, a painter, you name it.
All Black.
Who are Black, right? And not that it's all Black, but we're 60, 70% Black. I talked to you about the Victoria Tower in Harlem. We spent over $35 million with minority companies on that project, one project.
That's beautiful.
That's meaningful, right? Affirmation Tower will spend over $1 billion of contracting with minority companies. And we need to see a lot more of that. So what can be done, if your viewers, make sure they inform their elected officials how important economics are, and that if they have their own company and they have the ability to work with a developer, it starts by us being awarded, and then we are feeding that ecosystem, and we're all participating and rising together.
Absolutely.
Right? But we can no longer allow elected officials to pander to us. They're in the church.
Yeah, they're pandering.
They come in the church during election season and give a great speech, and we love the speech. Great speech.
We're motivated.
But nothing changes.
Nothing happens.
Nothing changes for us. Our schools still suck, right, in our community. When you look at the rates of poverty, homelessness, you know, any meaningful metric, we've not made progress in 50 years.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at all the problems that we have in our community, we don't really have all those individual problems. We have an economic problem, because if our economics were right, everything else would be solved.
Absolutely.
Right.
1000% agree with that.
Right.
We're tired of the pandering, the shucking and jiving.
Right.
Like, give us, you promised this, make it happen.
Right.
You know, it's pretty terrible. Now, I know you're a busy man, so I'm not going to hold you up too long. We've been at this for almost 50 minutes.
Okay.
So I want to ask you about the current climate that we're in. We're in a recession or going into recession.
Mm-hmm.
The feds are hell-bent on fighting inflation.
Right.
We just had a raise, 75 basis points. There's probably going to be another raise.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts as far as continuing to invest into real estate? Because a lot of people out there are scared, especially when it comes to real estate. People saying the housing market is going to crash. This is going to happen. What are your thoughts?
So John Rockefeller said, buy when there's blood on the streets. Okay. So let's just talk about that. So first of all, why real estate makes sense. Like, real estate is not Enron. It's not cryptocurrency. It's not an NFT. There's intrinsic value because people have to live somewhere. They need, you're providing people with shelter, a roof over their heads, a place to raise their families. And there's value to that, and they pay for it every single month, right? So the volatility in the market, because interest rates are higher, is really an opportunity. So if you can buy a property now and make the math work at 7% interest rates, how does that property work when we're back to 3 and 4% interest rates? What I learned from my time on Wall Street is the companies that invest in the downturn have a leg up when things come back to normal, and they do very well. And that's really been the key to what we've done at Exact Capital. We invest heavily during the downturns, and we flourish when economic cycles turn up.
Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to say it.
Yeah.
Because you can change. I mean,
you can always refi.
The cost of capital is the biggest input into any of these, right? So if you go from, you're a mortgage professional, you know this. You go from a 7% rate to a 4% rate.
Yeah, you save at 3% interest.
You're killing it.
It's a home run.
You're killing it,
Yeah.
right? So if you can make it work now, even if it's not cash flowing, but if the numbers work and it pays for itself at 7%, do it.
Do it.
And then when it gets to 5% refi, when it gets to 4% refi, when it gets to 3% refi, and that money's going in your pocket, it's going into your investment account, it allows you to buy more real estate. Keep it up.
Well, also from a tax perspective, also, you know, and this
Tax-free.
is tax-free, right? And then also what I try to tell people is, look, it doesn't matter if the rates are 7, 8, 9% right now.
Right.
You got to think about the tax play when it comes to real estate depreciation and cost segregation and bonus depreciation and all these wonderful things that you can do.
I say D, all the above. Absolutely right. Every single one. I mean, there's so many benefits, man. But like I said, there's a $2.5 trillion opportunity right now, because it's
7 million units.
Because we need 7 million housing units. That's just today. It's going to take 10 years, 15 years to build that. Over that time, we're going to probably need another 7 million, right? So we need to see our community wake up to real estate, get heavily involved in real estate, and get wealthy from real estate.
We have to participate.
Yeah.
We can no longer be on the sidelines.
Yeah. So I was saying this earlier before, we got on camera. Black Americans have a $1.7 trillion annual spending power. That alone makes us the 12th largest economy in the world. We got to get it together. Start to work together and get this wealth game up.
Yeah, and real estate to me is like the road.
It is the road
to build wealth.
Yeah.
Right?
Real estate is not, it's not rocket science. It's a pretty fundamental formula.
Yeah, it's ABC 1, 2, 3. Once you understand the numbers and the language of it, anybody can really buy real estate and get rich and ultimately become wealthy off of it. I mean, this was a phenomenal conversation. Any partner words you got for us? Because you dropped a lot of gems here tonight.
Man, I just want to say I'm really proud. I big respect to you.
Thank
what
you.
You're doing, man. Because like I said, with that $1.7 trillion of spending power, what we don't have is collaboration. We're not sharing enough information and knowledge with each other. So what you're doing, what EYL is doing, man. It's amazing. It's never been done before. So I'm a big fan, and thank you.
No,
for
thank
having me
you.
here today.
We appreciate your kind words, and thank you for coming on. I know you're busy as hell, and I know this wasn't part of the schedule originally. We had to reschedule this, that, and the third. So I thank you for accommodating us and coming here and just giving us information, because people in your position, like, we don't know how to find people in your position, and I'm glad the platform has opened it up so we now can have folks like you spread your intellectual property and give hope and inspiration to folks who want to become developers and want to go into that commercial real estate. I know me, I'm inspired every time I hear you guys talk. I'm like, damn, I really need to do more commercial real estate and get out the residential space. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being here. How can people find you?
Get me on. So I know social media is all out there. I'm really on LinkedIn. That's where I really focus.
Okay.
I got a little Instagram account, a little Facebook account. I don't do much there, but LinkedIn is where I'm at.
LinkedIn. Tell me your LinkedIn.
Craig Livingston.
There you have it, y'all. Make sure y'all tap in with Craig on LinkedIn. This was an incredible episode. Drop some gems in the comments. Again, shout out to Zillow for sponsoring this episode. And look, we'll see you next week. All right. This is Matt Garland, NMLS number 58700, but better known as MG the Mortgage Guy. Peace.